Thank you, thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our 2018-2019 Youth Advisory Council Teen Summit. I'm Sanaya Joy Hood, and I'm your YAC president. I'm so great that you could be here with us. We have our beautiful panel here, and we're actually going to let them introduce themselves after I talk about today's topic. Today's topic is race relations and societal health. So we'll start with our first panelist.
Yep. Hi, my name is Corey McDougall. I'm a diversity peer educator for the Office of Diversity Programs and Services at Columbus State University.
Hey everyone, my name is Romeo Almanza, and I am the graduate assistant in the Office of Diversity Programs and Services, also at Columbus State University.
Hi everybody, my name is Chrissy Redmond. I am also a diversity peer educator out of the Office of Diversity Programs and Services at Columbus State University.
Good evening. My name is Officer Moody, or Corporal Moody. I see some that I might recognize that I taught DARE out there. Been a police officer here at Columbus for 10 years.
Evening. My name is Corporal Travis Spencer. I've been with CPD for 19 years. I'm also a DARE officer now. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Nikki Sutton. I am the program manager for what's called the multi-tiered system of supports for students in the Muskogee County School District.
Hello, my name is Aiden Anderson, and I'm a senior at Columbus High School.
Hello, my name is Zabria Roberts, and I'm a sophomore at Shaw High School.
All right, can we get a round of applause for our beautiful panelists? Thank you. All right, so we're going to watch a quick video on societal health and race relations. So we're going to have that video play.
What were some of the experiences you guys had with racial diversity, maybe in your neighborhood or just different experiences you've had?
I grew up in a really, really small town in New Jersey, and it was primarily white people. And I was literally the darkest person in my entire grade. I'm pretty sure I was the only Indian one. I mean, people didn't really understand my background. It's not that it ever hindered me. It's more there was always just a lot of questions. And I remember the first time I realized I was different was in second grade when this little boy came up to me, and I'll never ever forget him. But he came up to me and he was like, "Why is your skin darker than mine?" And I was like, "It is." Like, oh my God. And yeah, so there's a lot of that. But I mean, as I grew older, people thought it was like cooler that I was different. But when I was younger, there was a lot of just misunderstanding of why I was so dark.
Yeah, I feel like I'm real lucky. I grew up in a town called Cambridge in Massachusetts, which is, incredibly diverse. Not just diverse from a black or white or African American standpoint, but also from an international standpoint. So, our school, Cambridge Ridge and Latin, we had, Haitians, we had people that were from Asia, different parts of Asia. I mean, we had people from Europe that are born in Europe to come over. There were a bunch of programs that brought foreign exchange students. So the education system was as much aligned with our class structure as well as learning from these people that are from all around the world.
I grew up in a very small town in South Jersey. It's a blueberry farming town. So it's primarily dominated by the large Italian population. And then you have Hispanic migrant workers. So there's a very clear divide between whites and non-whites. You could see that divide in school as well, because all the Hispanic migrant workers would keep to themselves. And then myself, I was kind of caught in the middle because I'm half Hispanic and half white. So sometimes I'd get along with the Italian kids, and then sometimes I would just be the complete outsider, which when I was younger, I was the complete outsider because they're like, "Oh, your name's Wally, it's funny, it's different, ha ha ha." So that's why most of my childhood I grew up using my middle name, Michelle.
It's interesting. I think school is the big area where you really experience one thing or the other, and I think for me, you're right, in school it was, you generally hung out with people maybe of your race and ethnic group. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that as long as it's respectable across different groups, but I remember talking to people at my college and in Southern Virginia, and they went to school in Southern Virginia High School, and they talked about race wars. They talked about, black and whites, not physically, but pitting themselves against each other, and there's actually a real just stress between those two those two ethnic groups, and it was really crazy to think about what it would be like to go to a school like that, or live in an area my whole life, and that's all I see. And if that's all I see, then that's all I think. And you know, that's what, you know, you see on TV a lot now these days. A lot of these places, that racial divide is just so prevalent, and I think it starts in schools. And you know, I think I was blessed to be in a school. I didn't necessarily see that.
So, and Tricia, earlier you said that you had that scarring moment in second grade. That, you know, that was when you were first aware of your race. But what about the rest of you? When was the first time that you were aware that your race was different?
That's a good question. I don't know. Being white, you're not really ever told you're white. It's almost like that white privilege concept that, unfortunately, I do think a lot of white people don't think about that enough, which I think they should. I think the one time I did feel different, it wasn't a scarring moment, but it was a telling moment. Something I didn't think about was actually when I was in Haiti on a mission trip, and I was hanging out with these Haitian kids, and they were so fascinated by my hair on my arm, and I didn't think about it. I'm like, wait, white people have hair on their arms, but you know, other people don't. And that was just one of those weird physical differences I never thought about until these kids are so fascinated and they're pulling my hair. They're like, why do you have hair? And I'm like,
Oh my God.
I'm like, wow, I guess there's a real difference there. But it wasn't a bad difference as much as me recognizing, you know, I'm in a place where being white is not the norm. I remember in Haiti they called us, I forget what it was called, but they called us in Creole crabs because we were red. So that was the fun telling. And I remember, and it's just a bunch of white people from our church and stuff, and we're walking in the streets of Port-au-Prince in Haiti, and everyone's staring at us like we're this crazy aliens. And I just can only imagine, I could bet there's places in America and you know, in other countries where it's me or white people doing that to other minority groups. So
Kind of funny you mentioned alien, because when I first moved to Jersey, I was in 4th grade. I used to live in Westchester County, New York, which is, you know, very small. But I grew up with all my friends, and I didn't have any problems being the sole Hispanic one. I didn't even realize, you know, that was a difference between me and my friends until I got to Jersey. Because I moved to Jersey in the middle of 4th grade, and they tried to stick me in ESL classes because my last name's Hispanic. And that was the first time, like, I finally realized that, you know, hey, something's odd, or not different, not so bad odd, but different about me. And they called me an alien because, like, I was, you know, tanner than they were. But, you know, I knew Spanish. The New York school system was also a little bit more ahead than my Jersey school, so I could do all this crazy math and long division and multiplication. And I know in 4th grade it sounds crazy, but they're like, oh, I can't believe you can do all this. You're such an alien, you know, and they exiled me. For most of 4th grade, I didn't have any friends because I was the lone alien in the corner of the room.
Yeah, that's exactly, it's funny you bring that up, because when I was younger, I did this after-school math program, and just as a stereotype, Indians are really good at math. I'm not anymore. I wish that stereotype was true.
you're a journalist, so
You're a
you
journalist,
understand not being good at math.
But when I was younger, I really fit into that stereotype because I was just a whiz kid at math. And then so everyone was like, oh, of course you're good at math, like you're Indian and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, all right, well, getting good grades, I guess that matters. But I was embarrassed by that because, and then I feel like there was a point where I dumbed myself down because I didn't want to fit in that like smart kid Indian stereotype. I wanted to be the cool girl who happens to be a little tan.
Okay, that video was amazing. And we're going to start just by opening the floor with the question. Also, just to be clear, if you do have questions, please line up on that little line and then come around to the podium and make a line that way so we can keep it structured. So I'm going to start with the question, how, you know, if this is open for anybody, even our floor, how do you deal with diversity in a community where you're the minority? Anyone want to answer that question?
So dealing with diversity in a community where you're the minority, it's important to encourage others to embrace your difference. If you're in a setting, say I'm in a setting and I'm the only African American female there, if people are speaking from a standpoint that only focuses on white males, then I'm going to speak from my perspective because that's what I know. That's what I can encourage other people to learn about it as well, but it's important to just embrace others' differences and also yourself. If you don't speak up for yourself or if you don't shine your light in a room, no one's going to know you or where you come from or anything about you, and they're going to hold on to their stereotypes or their perceptions that they have of you. So it's important to just speak up for yourself if you're in a situation where you're the minority in a group, and also in respecting the opinion or differences of the other people that you're associating with at the same time.
Okay, where do you guys think this racial divide comes from when it comes to, oh, you have something to add? Oh, okay, yes, please add.
I was just going to say that if you're not the minority, you have the privilege of being a voice for people who you come with a privilege to speak for people who are the minority, if that makes sense. So like Chrissy said, if you are the minority, it's important to share your perspective, but if you aren't the minority, for instance, I'm a white female, so where other people of color, their voices are often silenced, I have the privilege and ability as a white person to share their perspective using my voice and privilege, if that makes sense.
Yes.
I've also found that it works to be confident in yourself. When you are the minority in a situation, speak with confidence. You know who you are. You know about yourself when it comes to stereotypes or opinions. Opinions are cool, stereotypes, whatever, but you know you. So when folks say certain things or, I say speak slick out their mouth, I go ahead and speak up confidently and say, hey, no, that's not right. And I tell them what the real is. So be confident in yourself. Know yourself first, and then you can speak confidently to them and affect change when it comes to those stereotypes and opinions.
Okay, so just bouncing off having confidence within yourself, is there anything that you might have faced where you learned to have confidence, or what are some of the ways that you've learned to have confidence being your own race?
One of the things I learned from a lot of great role models. And so other African American women who were leaders in the community, who worked extensively with, when I was a youth, with, speaking skills and, having the confidence to talk to others and voice my opinion about certain things. I think that helped me a lot, as well as having a diverse set of experiences in and out of school. So being able to participate with different groups of people, doing different things, whether it be community service or actually, doing something as a part of a school event or school extracurricular activity was really instrumental for me.
Okay, so for those people that may not be exposed to other, I would say maybe they might not feel like they have that opportunity to express themselves and have that confidence. Like, where can those experiences happen if you don't necessarily have it at school or in a club that you're in? Like, because some people feel like, oh, I might have moved here out of town and I might not be familiar with the area or be, as culturally accepted as I would like to be. So just how do you deal with that?
So I'll say, as diversity peer educators at Columbus State, we plan events over an array of topics, LGBTQ, race, ethnicity, religion. I would say put yourself in those uncomfortable situations and go to those events. Yeah, you may not be part of the LGBTQ community, but you can learn something while you're there. You may not be part of this religious group, but attend their events, see what they're about, and learn about them, because that's the way you'll grow.
Okay, so going to the more legal aspect of things, when there are different stereotypes as far as, Black people might feel that they get charged more for certain crimes in this area, or just that difference, how can you speak on that aspect when it comes to that diversity within the legal system? Yes.
I think she was looking at me. Or was it you? I should lean back, I guess, next time. From what I understand, the stats are out there that does happen in the justice system. So it's a fact. The best way to combat that is, my parents had me in fear of getting caught up doing anything wrong. I wasn't scared of getting caught by the police. I was scared of getting caught by my parents, my dad in particular. So while it may be true that minorities get charged more severely, you still have to commit the act to be charged, so for the most part. So best thing is to do the right thing. We all know right from wrong. You all are raised better. Just do the right thing and try to do the right thing at all times and keep from being charged in the first place. I've been cited 9 times as a teenager in high school and college for driving violations. Never been arrested, but I've done my share of things, and my parents corrected me for those things, but being charged, no. But just do the right thing as much as you can.
I would say educate yourself, be armed with the facts. There's lots of facts out there. There's organizations that work to help especially young black men who have been incarcerated who have been put under the death penalty for crimes that they may or may not have committed. There's tons of organizations, like I said, out there, and just arm yourselves with the facts and know just the information that's out there and the statistics, because it's important to understand that there is prejudice in the American criminal system, and just to be aware of it.
So,
It's not what you're charged with, it's what you're convicted of. You can be charged with a lot of stuff, but it comes down to what you're convicted of. So if you get a citation or you get charged with something, you still have your day in court. So sometimes folks get bent out of shape about the charge they get, and they worry themselves so much about the charge. Don't worry about that yet. Go to court. Like I said, have your facts straight, get your defense together. It's not final until you're convicted. So charges, you have folks that run from us and whatnot to avoid a charge. Don't worry about the charge. The convictions would count. So just don't sweat the small stuff, basically.
So speaking on prejudice, where do you think this kind of racial divide comes from?
I would say, now are we talking historically? Is your question like historically or like leading up to the present, leading up to the present?
I'll say like personally, like going on now, modern day racial divide.
Okay. I would honestly say media would be a great impact on that. You see things in the media, especially things with people getting pulled over and it going completely left. That always turns out to be some type of spiral. It turns into a movement. Most of the times we all know those situations, and media plays a big role into a lot of our perceptions today, but media is not always true. Media doesn't always display the facts. You have to always go and do your research. You can see something, I know a lot of people see like Instagram or Twitter as like their news feed, but whenever I see something on there, I always have to go and Google it myself because I don't know if that's going to be 100% true. And 8 times out of 10, I find out it's not true. So I always suggest going back and just doing that double research, because even what the situation was a couple months ago, I believe there was a group of students who were on a field trip, and they were from a Catholic school, and they were going to an anti-abortion, the march, and they were saying that they were taunting this Native American man, and they had on Make America Great Again hats, but because they were wearing those hats, they were kind of just targeted off the bat because they were wearing those hats. I don't really remember the entire situation, but the media portrayed them as being that hat and wearing those hats and seeing where that slogan comes from and the history behind it and who's leading that slogan, and they just kind of took it left, when in reality, we don't really know what would happen. We have a portion of the video, we don't have the entire situation, so definitely controlling what you allow yourself to believe, especially in media.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess in addressing the historical roots of why there's a racial divide, I think everyone knows, especially going back like 50, 100, 200 years, that there was a lot of explicit barriers to any sort of integration amongst the races. There were legal barriers to, I guess, breaking down stereotypes and to having a cohesive society. But obviously amidst the 20th century, when there was a civil rights movement and there was a greater emphasis on trying to have cooperation amongst the races, more intermingling, integration, desegregation, and whatnot, many of the explicit barriers fell down, but I feel as if a lot of implicit barriers kind of remained in place. And essentially, because you have a lot of neighborhoods that are almost entirely homogeneous, you don't have a lot of intermingling amongst people with various demographic backgrounds, different experiences, that the best way of fighting the stereotypes, meeting another person that may look different and have different experiences, and realizing that they're not very different from you, that those interactions don't happen as much as they probably should. And when applied across the entire country, because there's more or less seclusion or I guess not explicit segregation, but more self-segregation amongst certain demographics, which is reinforced by certain socioeconomic factors, that there's not a chance to interact with people. And I feel like interacting with people is the best, most effective way at trying to take down barriers, whether they be implicit or explicit. But I think that the historical factors, the explicit barriers, have become internalized and are reinforced by non-legal means. But that'd be my answer to the origins. And correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah.
With racial tension and race relations and, going back to social media and how the social media definitely plays a big part when it comes to teenagers and even adults, and I just want to ask, with that divide in racism and just how people are different, so how can that kind of play a role on a person's mental state? I want to ask you that question, so.
Okay, so how can issues that are brought up, racial issues, especially highlighted in social media or media, play a role in a person's mental state? One of the things that comes to mind is the fact that, there's obviously when racial groups or there's tension between racial groups, what comes along with that is a lot of stereotyping. Right? So that happens often, regardless of whether the tension is actually valid or not. But, the stigma that comes along with that can be definitely very mentally draining, it can cause a lot of just disappointment, self-hatred sometimes, depending on how much a person internalizes the messages that are coming from others and from other racial groups. And so, exchanging that kind of, and I'm going to call it poison, because it is poisonous to our internal well-being when we say things to each other that are not, very nice or may not even actually be true. So a lot of that can be very deprecating and can cause one to feel very, can disengage, socially, maybe even from, parents or relatives, and even cause sometimes, in some cases, may cause, your behavior to change. And so things that are, when you're constantly taking in negative messages, those things can alter how you think and feel, not only about yourself, but about others. And so you may take, that information and it impacts you so much that it causes you to become almost a different person. So no longer will your friends or your family sometimes even recognize who you are. You may physically look the same, but your behavior, the way you interact with others, can very gradually make a transition to something that they don't recognize. So that's something to be aware of and to be cautious of at all times, especially knowing who you are and having your people, your loved ones that are close to you, when they're familiar with who you are and they say, hey, you're a different person. I don't recognize this person who was once my really close friend, or who was, that daughter or that son that really done a lot of great things and was very helpful and nice to people. So pay attention to some of those things, and also just be aware of yourself. Sometimes you can detect when things are not right even within yourself, and allow those other individuals to really be supportive of you and to help you through whatever those challenges might be. So mentally, it definitely can have a significant impact, so just definitely be aware of that.
I have a follow-up question for Dr. Sutton. So it seems like internalization is a big factor for, like you said, that can lead to self-hatred and can change the way people perceive the world. Because I don't know the science behind how people internalize various stimuli, or like the cognitive processes that going on there, but if, let's say, the most obvious differences between two people are the aesthetic ones, like on face, so that could be race, that could be gender, just outward appearance. Even if a situation, a decision, or a certain action is taken that doesn't necessarily or wasn't motivated by any certain prejudice, or I guess prejudice would be the correct term, but it's internalized as such, how can you target the internalization? Or even if it was based upon, an action was based upon prejudice, trying to prevent somebody from internalizing an experience and generalizing that negative experience to everyone of a certain race, of a certain gender. How can you target internalization, and in a positive manner? Yeah.
I think when we first started this discussion, we talked about the importance of sharing your experiences and being very genuine about who you are as a person. When you're trying to really target internalization and really understanding how a person may perceive things, or how you may perceive things, one thing that's really important to do is just kind of have a reality check, right? So a lot of times we take in information and we may be missing bits and pieces, and that might tell a totally different story when we're missing that information versus when we actually have all the information in front of us. And so internalizing and trying to stop that process is very difficult. It can be difficult. However, when you're able to sort of talk through and understand what it is that you're feeling and why you're feeling it, making that connection from what you are feeling based on the information that was shared can help you to realize that sometimes, well, why am I feeling this way? Sometimes we think about certain things that trigger our emotions, our behavior. Sometimes that can happen without even our awareness, right? So there may be prior experiences that we've had in our lives that might trigger a certain emotion, a certain feeling. But it's important to, at that particular time, to stay, within that moment and really start to sort through and understand why you feel the way you feel about a certain person, or about, a certain, situation. Why? Why do I feel this way? What's causing me to feel the way that I feel? And sometimes when you're working through those whys, then it becomes, apparent that there's a mismatch between what you're feeling and what's before you.
And as a sort of follow-up to that, if, let's say we notice, like you said, you can notice a friend or a family member who potentially had a negative experience and caused them to spiral downward. If it seems like trying to be really introspective like that requires someone to be just that, like reflective, and at least in my experience, not every person is like that. So if I identify my friend or a family member, or just a peer, who seems like they've changed over time, what are things that I can do to try and help them work through a moment without having them become defensive, or I guess make a positive contribution to their mental state?
Sure. So sometimes there are things that, especially even with interacting with friends and family members, that you just cannot handle yourself. It's just, maybe you've tried and a situation is just, either you're afraid to really address the matter because you're afraid to either lose a friend, or maybe it might turn into something, that could cause, some really significant, emotions to emerge. One of the things, especially if you're actually in school, is to have someone like a school counselor or a school psychologist, somebody who can serve as a mediator or someone who can kind of help you through those situations. A lot of times, there could be things that are just very difficult for you to handle alone with, between you and a friend or you and a group of friends. So those are just things to think about, is that you can call on the support of either another friend or another trusted adult in the building, or, if you're at home, then maybe your parent, to kind of help you work through, some of those sorts of things.
Just to co-sign off what she said and what you said earlier, what I tell my students is everything that goes in comes back out some kind of way. You got to monitor what goes in your body. Now, I'll just mean food, because a lot of kids start laughing when I say that, but I mean what goes in here and what goes in here. If you hang around with folks who constantly do negative things or say negative things, it's going in. You're seeing it, you're observing it, it's going in. You got to learn how to cut those things off. If somebody comes to you with some negative stuff, just go ahead and stop them off the top. Hey, I don't want to hear that. You see the game last night? I don't want to hear that negativity. I don't want to let it get in here. Once it gets in, now you got to deal with it. Now you got to internalize it. So you got to monitor what goes in your body all the time. Music, TV, movies, friends. Just check it. When you start hearing it going negative, hey man, change the subject. Let's do something different.
Thank you. We actually have a question from the floor. Mr. Jonathan.
Hi. My name is Jonathan Robertson. I'm an 11th grader at Columbus High School. And kind of building off of what you guys were all talking about with historical precedent and different strategies to help kind of combat the negative aspects of race relations which are occurring right now, if we kind of think back, my question is, what takeaways can we have from kind of the civil rights era and those types of strategies and supports within the community from different people, whether that be from the church or whatever counselors they may have seen, that to kind of deal with things from an internal and external viewpoint? What kind of strategies can we take away from all different races to work together to kind of create positive change?
So I would say something that we can take away from the past is we noticed that they didn't get to try to know each other. Maybe if we actually break the barriers and actually get to know these other races instead of coming up with different stereotypes, that we can actually know who people are, because all people aren't the same, and that not all races are what you think they are. So taking away from that, it's actually getting to know these people instead of assuming what they are.
I would also say that because you all are students, some very easy to apply kinds of things that can help with just really understanding each other and mingling more is, really make an effort, in your school to get to know, even through, sitting in the cafeteria with, different, types of people, and getting to know somebody you don't know very well, and introducing yourself and kind of sharing a little bit about yourself and allowing that person or those individuals to share a little bit about themselves. Really making an effort and a conscious effort to do that on a regular basis. We know that everyone, including myself when I was in school, we have really great friends and we have best friends, and even if you are members of an athletic club or group or extracurricular activity where you're in groups, sometimes we gravitate towards the same people, right? Because we know them, we're comfortable with them, they're really good friends with us. So really, kind of think about, well, let's I'm going to meet somebody new this time. Or maybe when I'm in my classroom and it's time to, if the teacher has a group project or, allows us to pair up and gives us a choice to pair up with someone, I'm going to choose somebody else. I'm going to choose someone different from me and not necessarily my best friend. So just think about, those opportunities to do things like that even while you're at school.
I think to add on to that, you have to be very intentional. You have to put yourself, like I said earlier, in that awkward situation. It may be awkward to you, but know that when you're uncomfortable is when you start growing. When you start learning other people and you start experiencing new things, that's when you start growing. So put yourself in those shoes, talk to new people, experience new things. Just be out of your comfort zone, get out of the box.
I kind of have a follow-up question to what Jonathan said. Dr. Sutton mentioned that a lot of times people with their pre-existing group of friends are quite comfortable. And I would even go further to say that I think a lot of people, at least from what I can tell at my school, don't necessarily think that racial tension is the most pressing issue of the day or even in their lives. It's more like day-to-day, class-to-class. They're not constantly on top of trying to create a more socially just world, so to speak. So how is it if the end goal is to try and degrade stereotypes, or I guess get rid of them, break down barriers, and have a more cohesive society? How can you inspire intent in other people without trying to make them feel bad like they are the problem? I guess how can you get them to join with you if they're already comfortable, and even more so if they do not see the problem?
Okay. And I appreciate your question, because I think that the best way to really approach something like that is to really make it sort of a universal approach, right? So, an idea would be for a school building to have something where everybody is asked or expected or, really encouraged to, engage in an activity, social activity that requires some mixing and mingling and really getting to know, each other as, as friends, as friends of the human race, really, because we're all one race, we're the human race. And so, so to avoid, targeting anyone or making someone feel bad, it's really, taking that more, cohesive or group approach is going to be a little bit easier, I think, in my opinion, or at least a better approach. But it doesn't mean that it's, taking an individual approach is discouraged either. So I think that, when you're obviously, having the confidence, being comfortable in your skin, knowing who you are as a person, not being afraid to present yourself, knowing that there might be someone who, with whom you approach and engage might feel uncomfortable, be prepared for that. That might happen. But it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you. It just means that, there's some discomfort potentially on the part of the other person. But that doesn't mean you stop trying, right? And not necessarily with that person, maybe try with others. At some point, you will engage someone who is open to wanting to talk and wanting to get to know you as a person.
You want to add? Okay. Well, I love that our panelists have questions, but I definitely want to open the floor to the audience. If we could definitely get some audience participation out here. Yes, please come forward to the mic.
Hi, my name is Lily West. I go to Columbus High School, and my question is, when asking people about their ethnic background or cultural background, where's the line drawn between curiosity or wanting to not be ignorant and cultural insensitivity?
Oh, I like that one. I'm often curious of people's ethnicity, and it's all in how you ask it, in my opinion. Like, don't say, like, where you from, that's horrible, or what race you is. Like, if I see an avenue of approach, I will ask them, do you mind if I ask your ethnicity? or do I hear an accent or something like that? You get, yeah, I have an avenue, but definitely ask them their ethnicity, you know, and you can see their reaction. If they take homage to it, then apologize and drop it. But it's nothing wrong with being curious, just don't be overbearing with it. It's awesome.
I would say also it's important to knowing the difference between race and ethnicity. I'm in my senior year of college, and during our retreat this past summer, I really kind of overlapped the two until then. So I think it's important to know the difference. Your race is, so I would consider myself African American, that would be my race. My ethnicity would become Romy, correct me if I'm wrong, would be my culture, where I'm from, correct? Okay, sometimes I still get confused, so I just want to be sure. And again, it goes back to that approach. People, when I was even to this day, people come to me, they say, you're not black, you're Hispanic, or you're this, you can't be black. And I tell them, yes, I am. No, you're not, you must be mixed. And for a while, I started to think, I asked my mom, so what are we? Are we not? And I would, literally make up something oh, well, I think that we're this. It never connected down further enough to me. And I would make up something, and I had to get comfortable in that. But it was because of the way people asked me. They wouldn't ask. They would tell me what I am. And I had to be confident in who I was and what my race and my ethnicity was. So it's definitely about the approach, because you don't want to offend someone, and you don't want to make them feel less than of who they are.
I think it's always important to offer up first your own information. It's a give and take relationship, so if you want to know more, you should share first your own. It's important to give and then receive. So.
All right, we have another question from the floor. Ms. Courtney Fortunato.
Hi, yes, I'm Courtney Fortunato, and I'm a junior at Columbus High School. And I know we talked a lot about what students could do to kind of put themselves in environments where they can learn about people of different cultures, ethnicities, etc. So how do you think schools could improve in creating environments that appreciate and nurture diversity?
So I would say using students to do so. At CSU, I'm also on our diversity committee, so I'm the only student on that committee, and I've been on that committee since my second year, and I'm on there with community people from someone from AFLAC, their HR department, people in athletics, people in enrollment services, even up to and the committee reports to our president. So being able to give my input into how the school can help students display diversity, oftentimes it goes back to programming, making sure that students understand that their input is important. But if you're speaking to the school in itself, I would say looking at their demographics and seeing what underserved students they have and embracing those students, because they may feel alone. They may not feel like they belong. So you can give them a place, give them a platform to where they can give their input so they can feel like they have a place. That not only gives them an effort to be invested in their communities, more focused on graduating and succeeding in life, but they feel as though they are a part of the school, they're part of that community, and it helps everyone at the end of the day.
I'll add to that, actually. At Shaw High School, we actually just started this thing this year where we have Heritage Week. So everyone, every different culture, they can bring dishes, they can bring drinks, any foods, and we actually just have an entire week where they're able to immerse in different cultures and diversity. And it's an amazing experience. It went very well this year. So, I mean, that's also a great way to get different cultures, to be noticed and make sure that they're aware that, hey, there are, just your ethnicity is not just your ethnicity. So just to be culturally aware. We have our next question. Please say your name.
Hi, my name is Isabel Packard, and I'm a junior from Columbus High School. My question was kind of going back to what Aiden was saying earlier about implicit and explicit barriers. Do you think that there are any explicit barriers in our society today to diversity? And if not, what do you think the implicit barriers are between races in our society?
I'll take a shot at that one. Okay, so with regards to explicit, I'm just going to interpret that as anything that's not having to do with one's prior experience or like internal thought processes. But I think there are. The example provided previously about how there's certain neighborhoods that are zoned for certain schools that are almost entirely homogeneous. Like the middle school I went to, it was in Oregon. It was like 90+% white. It was not much diversity whatsoever. And I think that it's not necessarily a legal barrier per se, but there are like socioeconomic factors that do divide certain communities, and there are wealth gaps between races. And I think that those are explicit barriers to trying to promote the kind of interactions that happen in schools and everyday life, at the parks and whatnot, that are really important for trying to knock down the barriers. So I can't think of any legal barriers, but I can think of several like socioeconomic factors which may act as barriers to the sort of progress that we're aiming for. And with regards to implicit barriers that are kind of obstructing any sort of progress, I think that it really starts forming, like it could be what you hear on the news or what your parents espouse, and that there is some sort of the way that you're nurtured. Because a point that was brought up at a previous YAC meeting is that when you see two kindergartners that are just playing in preschool, right, they're not really conscious of any sort of differences between them. It's just all about having fun and playing. And I think that the implicit barriers would form based off of prior experiences that may be internalized poorly and overgeneralized, what you hear at home on the news by your parents, and then maybe even if, let's say, you go to a school where it's just homogeneous and everyone looks like you, then you don't have experience interacting with somebody of another race. And then your perceptions of what that race are what you hear around school. That could be through the form of jokes, that could be through textbooks, that could be through just gossip and rumor, what you hear on the news. So I think that the implicit barriers towards the kind of progress we're talking about are accrued over time, and that create and uphold the stereotypes that we're talking to. But the explicit, I think, are more, at least from what I can tell, like indirect and socioeconomic in nature.
All right, so we have our next question.
Okay, hi, my name is Mayana Hightower, and I'm a freshman at Columbus High School, and I have a question for Corporal Moody. With all the killings and things going on in the news, I was wondering how you personally deal with encounters that you might have with minority groups and things like that.
Let's see. That's a tough one. As far as encounters, if we make, as an officer, make a traffic stop for somebody that runs a red light or stop sign, I would pull over that vehicle because of the infraction. They went through the red light, they went through the stop sign, and not even knowing the race or gender of the driver until you get up to the door. As far as murders and things, in our city, what I've heard from our detectives is a lot of those, the past few years, have been gang-related and drug-related. But I don't know how better to answer that question. Police killings. You mean officer shootings? Officer-involved shootings? Officer-involved shootings. Yeah. As far as myself, I just go off of training, and we get trained very well by the police academy, very well in our training at the department, and just case-by-case scenario.
Thank you. We have our next question, Ms. Mia.
Hi, I'm Tamia and I go to Shaw High School. And I really don't have a question, but when we're going back to mental health and like depression and stuff, I feel like when people think about depression and mental health, they think about people that are sad and that are by themselves. But it really be some people that are all smiles and that's laughing and always happy. So I think it's very important to always check on your family members, your friends, no matter if they're smiling or happy, sad, it don't matter, because anybody could be going through anything, but everyone can cover it up. So I think it's very important to, check on everyone. And yeah, okay.
Thank you for sharing that. Your statement is very true, actually. A lot of times when students or adults are experiencing some form of depression, it may not be very obvious to you, especially someone who's very close to you. And so whether it be a friend or a family member, it is indeed important to make sure that that you're talking with them daily, that you're observing, their behavior, and like I mentioned earlier, any differences in, their interaction with others, or just their routine, their daily routine, something that sometimes is typically a little off. Don't ignore that as, oh, they're just having one of those days. So, really, take into consideration checking in with them, just like this young lady shared.
Going back to the explicit, implicit, and whatnot, and then also her question that she just asked, the overgeneralization. I know I had some kindergartners one time asked me, where was my hat? I didn't have my hat on. I said, I don't wear a hat. And they were like, where's your hat? And I realized they meant my shades that are normally on my head right here. So they were overgeneralizing the object on my head as a hat. Well, I say all that because sometimes we overgeneralize law enforcement. So even though a lot of shootings you see on TV and whatnot don't necessarily have officers that look like me per se, I still get bunched in there with everybody else. All of us are responsible for that shooting in Oregon, even though we had nothing to do with it. So that's how we have to deal with it here. We have to take that all into account. Y'all have no idea the amount of pressure that goes on with us. As soon as an officer does anything around the country, it's like, oh, man. Oh, now we're going to hear about it here in Columbus, and that's how it goes. Like you said, we do everything on a case-by-case basis, but at the same time, the implicit things that are going on is a lot of that, it's animosity. A lot of animosity between racial, between genders, between professions. It's a lot of animosity, a lot of not knowing. The less you understand, the more you fear, then that fear turns into a hate. So I think we need more understanding. That's why I like that we're here, and we're hearing y'all, and y'all hearing us, because we need more understanding to break down the animosity, because the animosity is a big part of the implicit bias that's going on, that's keeping the divide in place.
So jumping back to what you said about mental health, I think that when you find someone or someone comes to you in regards to their mental health and they don't want to seek a counselor, or they don't want to seek professional help, encourage them to do so, because sometimes there's that stigma of only weak people go see mental health professionals. But if you go see a doctor, or if you go see a dentist, they're all in your mouth or all touching you, you can go talk to a professional and sit down with them and just have a conversation. So there's nothing wrong with seeking help. So don't feel like you look weak or less than when you talk to someone about what's going on within you, because that's just as important as going to the doctor or the dentist or all those other doctors.
All right, we have a question on the floor.
Hi, my name is Giovanni Jackson. I'm with East Columbus Magnet. I have a question
Speak
for
up for
law
me.
enforcement. Speak up. Hi, my name is Giovanni Jackson. I'm with East Columbus Magnet. As law enforcement, what is your approach to diversity in the day-to-day of your job?
As you can see, I like to talk. I don't mind answering questions. My diversity, folks, we're both in community relations. We go around town everywhere. So everywhere I go, I try to talk to people. If I see you in Walmart, at the Gatorade aisle, I'm going to ask you what kind of Gatorade you're getting. I've had folks actually, get defensive, like, man, what you bothering me for? I said, what kind of flavor you getting? Well, you always bothering folks. What flavor you getting? Oh, I'm getting this Fierce Grape. Yeah, I like that too. My favorite flavor is Fierce Grape. So I try to just talk to as many folks as I can. We're in schools every day, so we're always around different personalities and everything else. So my thing is communication. Just the more you can communicate with people, the better off you'll be. Just just saying hello, saying how you doing. Sometimes you might be the only person that asks them how they're doing that day. I was told by a lady one time that everybody you make eye contact with deserves at least a time of day. And that's something small that you can do. To everybody you make eye contact with, give them the time of day. And I don't mean you say the time is 7:11. I mean, you can say good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and just acknowledge their presence, regardless of race, gender, whatever. Just acknowledge their presence. You might go a mile, you never know.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead, Mr. Moody.
Yes, communication is very important. I think we need to work on that in professionalism in communities, with neighbors, even if you go to the same church as somebody, or if you sit across from the same table with somebody, you need to communicate. Lots of things can be solved with communication. And in the video that they started with, the female talked about when she was real young, and a playground conversation about, oh, your skin's darker, and the innocency of us in our youth, and looking at differences. Maybe we're looking at it differently. Maybe we should look at what do we have in common? What do we have in common? And communicate. What do you do for Christmas? What do you do for birthdays? What do you do? And find out what you have in common. Maybe you would like to someday visit some country. Well, you're going to find out music and food and talk to them. See what you have in common.
I actually want to take it a little back to Mr. Moody was saying about the video and how race and everything does, the differences in your conversations change as you get older. So what are some of the things that you faced when you were younger that might have changed now, that, some things you didn't notice before, or some tensions that you have now, or how are you more aware of your surroundings now that you've gotten older? Anybody can take that one.
I'll take it. So when I was growing up and I went to school, I actually attended school in a predominantly white population of students, from elementary to middle. And it wasn't until I got to high school that I started to see more diversity of students. Students Latino, Hispanic, African American, and other races and cultures. And so growing up, my father was very adamant about being open to learning. And then now this is as an African American girl, being open to understanding and learning more about other cultures. And so that was just something that my parents taught me to do, and my brother as well, is learn, no matter where they come from, where a person comes from. Doesn't matter what socioeconomic status they might fall into, race, culture, all of it's different. And so I learned from a very young age that America's a melting pot of all kinds of people. And that actually was something I embraced early and actually appreciated that. I appreciated learning about different groups of people. And I learned very early that regardless of whether you're white, black, Latino, Asian, a person who wasn't nice was a person who wasn't nice. Didn't matter what their racial background was. And so, and I experienced some of that growing up. So I think that for me, again, just learning, being open to learning and being, taught that you should be open to learning people and like people for who they are as a person, not because of their skin color, not because of, how much money their families have or anything like that, but just because they're a genuinely nice person.
Okay, so like if we're speaking about experiences, I remember growing up, I went to a predominantly black elementary school. And in some cases, I was considered an Oreo because outside of school, I wouldn't just hang out with my normal black friends because my mom felt like it was always important for me to be put in more diverse settings. So I would be considered the Oreo in my class. So it was always different comparing me to other students because they always thought I was different even though we all looked the same. So, yeah.
I think usually being a minority in the sectors that I'm in, educating people about me and my culture, because sometimes they don't want to ask. So I may just tell them, oh, this is important to me because of X, Y, and Z, or we celebrate this because of this. So just being a voice for your people and educating others even if they don't ask. I mean, I just tell people.
Always understand that sometimes you might be the only example that folks see for your ethnicity, your gender, your race, whatever. You might be the only example they see, and they'll base their opinions off of what you do. Our music, I got stopped one time, a family on the left side and an old couple on the other side, and I was playing some obscene music in high school, and it really hit me right then, like, wow, this is the only opinion they're gonna have of me is this lewd music. Not the AB honor roll student that goes to Carver High School magnet. All they're gonna see is this guy playing lewd music. And I was like so embarrassed, myself, my parents. Just understand that that's one thing I look back on is I didn't realize that I was the example for right then all black men on University Avenue at that moment because of what I was doing. So you gotta set good examples all the time.
And I think, let's say I was in a room with with majority black and white people, that doesn't necessarily mean I want to be the model Hispanic person. So you need to ask that person, hey, is it okay if we use you as an example for this? Or is it okay if this? Just because they're there doesn't mean that they are who you need to use as the model for everything. Just because there's an Asian, they're like, oh, we need to talk to you about all Asians. They may not want to be that person. They may not want to play that role. So being mindful of that.
Hi, we have a question on the floor, Ms. Dominique.
Hey, I'm Dominique Webb from Northside High School. So going back to saying sometimes you just need to see a doctor to speak about your issues going on, my question is some people don't like being open, some people don't like being vulnerable. So what's another sort of source of catharsis for some people? Because not everyone likes speaking personally. I don't like talking to people. So what's other things that we can recommend to friends to implement in their lives?
So if you don't like talking to others, and this could be for adults or students, journaling is really helpful. Some people keep diaries, or I don't know if they still call them diaries these days, but a journal to write in, just to write out your thoughts and your feelings. That can be cathartic. And sometimes just, listening to music and trying to really kind of, find a way to relax. So you find your release. Some people like to exercise and go for walks or runs or go for a bike ride. Some people might call a trusted friend. So those are just different things that you can try. Now, does that mean that there's a one-size-fits-all, model for all of us? No. You do what's helpful for you. Some people go for a swim, so some people even clean, believe it or not. So, it's whatever is helpful and soothing for you and helps you to relax and kind of help you to get, really process and be reflective of what's going on in your life at the time. The other thing is that sometimes we're afraid to talk to people that are closest to us, right? So, mom and dad or our closest friends, because we don't want people to know what we're going through. And a lot of times it's helpful to even talk to someone who's kind of like a stranger. So they do have number like the 911 or 211 where you can call, like a crisis line or something like that if you just need to talk through some things. and to help you sort out what you're feeling. There are those avenues as well that are available to individuals who are just struggling and maybe not comfortable talking with others.
I would also say knowing yourself. I know when I was in high school, I'm from Detroit. I moved to Georgia my junior year of high school. And after I moved, I found out that one of my best friends attempted to commit suicide. And there's 4 of us. We're like sisters. They're the sisters I never had. And when I found out, I was hurt because I was like, well, we talk about everything. Like, why didn't I know this? And I didn't find out some months later from our other best friend. But it's important to know who your friends are and knowing when they're changing. Someone said that earlier, knowing when they're changing, knowing when something isn't right with them, when they're becoming distant. And then again, knowing yourself. If you ever feel like you're going through something, knowing yourself, okay, like sometimes I get in these moods or time periods where I don't want to talk to anybody. Like I'm already kind of quiet and stay to myself as it is, but I don't want to like talk to anybody. Like, I'll go to class, go to work, go home. I'm good. I don't call my parents and they're like, Chrissy, what are you doing? Like my brothers are like, Chrissy, like, and I'm just like, I'm good. Like but when I feel myself going into that, or if there's a lot going on, I'm stressed and I kind of retreat to myself, I tell my friends, okay, I feel like I'm getting into this, so check in on me every now and then. If you don't hear from me in like a week, just text me, be like, I'm good, but just to make sure that I'm really good, because I might be telling myself I'm good, but I'm not actually good. And another coping mechanism that you, journaling is good, but another thing is, I don't know if I saw this on, I don't know, like a TV show where they were watching Oprah or something like that, but writing things down, like writing down what your problem is, and then ripping it up. So at one point, it was like someone made me mad, and I put trust, like I didn't trust anymore. So I put trust on there, and I ripped it up, and that was my way of forgiving them. Or I wrote forgiveness, and I ripped it up, and it was stress, ripped that up. It was a class I did bad in. I was stressed about that. Wrote down that class, ripped it up. So ripping it is kind of symbolizing you're over it. So being able, if something is stressing you out or something's bringing you down, writing that down, ripping it up and saying, okay, I'm done with this, kind of symbolizing that. So just knowing yourself and finding, again, the coping mechanisms that can help you get through whatever you're going through.
Writing it down. Write a song or something, like Taylor Swift, Adele, they're making money off writing down their personal experiences and made it into a song. You ain't got to sing it, just write it down, make it into a song, and somebody else can sing it for you, and you get paid for it. So, write it down. Good thing.
All right. Thank you so much, Dominique. We have another question on the floor. Push the speak button for us. Thank you.
I was gonna ask, is it better to ignore, like, people who are a different race? Is it better to ignore their differences and think of them as just, like everyone else, and you're all the same? It doesn't matter if they're different. We're all like friends and stuff. Or is it better to embrace their differences?
I say definitely embrace. Never ignore someone's differences, because that's what makes them unique and diverse. And I think even the whole point of today is to come together and to embrace each other's differences, and to create tolerance. And yes, so that would be my answer.
We're actually going to take our final question from the audience.
Hello, everyone. I am Joy's mother. I just had a question for Dr. What's your name?
Sutton.
Dr. Sutton, yes. As a mother, I had my daughter at 9 to experience racial tension with an adult leader. And it was very hard for me, and a reality to me, that this is going on in the world. Like, I never in a million years would think that my daughter at the age of 9 would experience something like that from a leader. So as a parent, what type of suggestions do you give us? How do we introduce our children to talk to them about racial tension, and give us some good advice on how to deal with it?
So racial tension is something that could potentially come up, and it sounds like it's something that you said your daughter dealt with at a school or in a position where there was a leader. And so when, one of the things, and I think, a lot of our panelists have spoken this point, is as a parent, really making sure that she is aware of who she is, and then helping her to embrace that and to accept that and to be proud of who she is as a person, from her hair, her skin color, her body and things like that, just to really accept herself as who she is and love herself. And part of that is also, as a parent, you showing her that same love for her. I think when she goes out into the world, one of the things that, that she, and anybody, regardless of whether it's your daughter or anyone else, is that there are going to be some that don't have the knowledge of, and maybe not to a place where they want to understand and learn about other people. And understand and ask questions and accept or embrace those differences like we were just speaking of. And so, being prepared for, what we would quote unquote call rejection, or someone not being ready to approach that, that's something that, she or any of us have to be prepared for. So one of the things that I would say is make sure she understands that it's not her fault, that there are going to be, some of us or some individuals that are just not ready to embrace those differences or to have those conversations and to learn more and be knowledgeable. And they have to arrive at that place at their own time. And so, we can't force others, into that position. I mean, we do a lot as I think as a community, and certainly there have been examples of things, of efforts in our society to try to bridge those gaps and to really make race relations more palatable and something that we all would feel comfortable with. But the reality is, based on our experiences, our background, our all of those things, some of us, are going to be ready at different times. And some of us may, it's going to take a lot more time. And so, so knowing, for her to know that is important, and know that it's not her that's the problem. It's not her hair or her skin color or her body type that's the problem. It's that some individuals, and they have the right to say, I'm just not, or at least express that they're not ready to bridge those gaps with her. And so that would be my input. I don't know if any others have other suggestions.
Well, yes, thank you so much. Yes, you may sit down. Okay, so I'm actually going to give every of our panelists an opportunity to give any final remarks that they have, and I'm going to actually start on this end. So I'd like to give you any final remarks that you have, and we'll go down from there.
Okay. I guess I would say the most important thing is to always have open conversations, to embrace the awkward, is what we say at the diversity office, and to never shy away from having conversations about difficult topics like race relations, like LGBTQ, like ethnicity, like anything that's difficult to talk about. And don't forget to stand up for yourself, and to have confidence in who you are and what you believe. That's really important. And also, finally, be armed with the facts and what you know to be true.
I think the most important thing is to be intentional, and if you're not intentional, then you may not ever grasp any concept or learn something new. That would be my biggest takeaway, is just be intentional about learning diversity and learning that everyone is different. And that's different isn't necessarily a bad thing. Different is okay. We're all different people. So just learn about everyone.
I would say leading by example. Be the change you want to see. Be who you want the world to turn into. If you want your classmates to be not be one way, but if you want them to accept the differences of others, then you have to start by accepting the differences of others. If you want your community to thrive in a diverse situation, then you have to be able to thrive in a diverse situation. So definitely leading by example and being the change that you want to see.
I just want to say thanks again for inviting us to be here. Also, something that helped me when I was younger, interacting with people different from me, was sports. I loved basketball, baseball not as much, but basketball, and that helped me with interacting and learning, growing, and that really helped me out.
Everything y'all just said, I'm taking notes. The more you know, the more you grow. Just take in as much as you can. Try to learn as much as you can. Learn different cultures, learn from different people. You never know what little tidbit of information is going to come in handy in the future. Just be willing to take it in, listen, put it away somewhere for the future. And, just I wish everybody the best. If you ever need anything, you have Corporal Spencer, Corporal Moody down at PD. If you have any more questions after tonight, feel free to reach out to us in the Crime Prevention Office. We'll be happy to help you.
I'm going to also kind of echo some of the comments here, but I would say the takeaway from this would be to be the difference. Be the difference for yourself, be the difference regardless of how it might appear to your friends, your family. You may look different and in terms of how you think and how you value race, culture, and those sorts of things. One of the things that we have to always keep in mind is that every one of us deserves dignity and respect, regardless of where we come from. And it doesn't cost a dime to do that, to provide those things. So I would say just make sure that if you treat everyone with dignity and respect, then you're on your way to certainly being the difference for not only your peers, but those who will come after you.
I think with regards to taking away from this panel discussion, taking the information from this and going back and trying to apply it at home or at your school, at least my biggest takeaway is that from what especially youth are able to affect with regards to change is just treating people as individuals, trying to see that, yeah, we all have different backgrounds, different experiences, we may even appear different, but that trying to treat one another on an individual basis is probably the best way that we can affect any sort of change. I feel as if y'all are probably the stewards for the progress that we're trying to attain. So if trying to attain progress is important to you, just trying to see people through an individual lens rather than through a group lens, and just trying to be conscious of even the moments where you may be stereotyping another person, recognizing that and trying to correct that for your next interaction or going into the future. Just trying to be conscious of trying to treat people as individuals rather than members of their own or of a group.
And my takeaway from tonight would definitely be to step out of your box and to meet new people and learn about new cultures and everything, to expand yourself and to get to know people for who they are.
I would like to thank all my panelists for coming out tonight. Can we just get a round of applause for the panelists? I would also like to thank my audience participants. Can I get a round of applause for those? So I'm so glad you guys got to come out. I do hope you guys learned something. This actually concludes our YAC talk show. I'm Sanaya Joy Hood, your YAC president. Thank you.